Good afternoon, Mr. Ritchie. Please do have a seat. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to come over and see us, Mr. Poppins.
Oh, it's my pleasure completely.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I just, well, immediately as a kind of an icebreaker, obvious question, why are you interested in working for our company?
Well, I've read on your website that your college/university is planning to become one of the leading research institutes for biodiversity studies. So I was very eager to send in my CV and have a closer look to the job ad actually.
Sorry to interrupt you here. As you're saying, biodiversity, etc., it's a very important issue for us. Did you think of any specific research project that we've done in the past where you say, well, that is the kind of project that I'll really be interested in?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm really eager to work with you in person, actually, because I've seen in your CV that you've been working in the nitrogen and sulfur cycle, and that is actually one of my expertise as well. So it might be very interesting for us to work together.
I see. Specifically, what publication do you refer to, if I may ask? Or
well, it was mostly the use of nitrogen isotopes in agriculture.
And would you then, from your expertise and from your background, be more interested in the developing more of a theoretical framework or going more into applications?
Well, actually more the fundamental work, and I do think that is something that you are more interested in as well at University College in Dublin. Now, I do come from an engineering background, and I do work at the laboratory of Professor Verstraete right now. So I am doing loads of more applicational research, but the research that I'm doing right now also has some very fundamental questions. So I've become very interested in that, and that is why I would really want to work more closely to the fundamentals.
Could you give me a nutshell of a specific research question, etc., and the method that you apply to?
Yeah, well, right now I am working with more bacteria, not really the nematodes, but more the bacteria in the biodiversity studies in sediments. And right now we're trying to use them in reactors, but to use them in reactors is very important to know how they function in the sediments, why they love the conditions where they are in. So for me it would be very, very interested to learn more about that. And that is what I've done at the Max Planck Institute as well. They've got loads of know-how about that, about the more fundamental questions. And that is why I wanted to work with you, and I worked with them in the past already.
So you mentioned a pretty important institute at Max Planck. How large would you say your current network is within our domain?
Well, of course I'm still pretty young, so I can't really compete with people like you or people at MPI. But I do feel I already have some important networks, especially because I come from the University of Ghent, and I've worked under Professor Verstraete. And as you probably know, he's one of the leading scientists in microbial ecology. So, yeah, of course, I really have that network of the University of Ghent.
Okay, let's talk about some completely different issues now. Normally, typically, what role do you take up when you have to work in a team?
Yeah, I do think that I've got a bit more leadership when I work in a team. Yeah, it's mostly because I'm used to taking on leadership in my spare time, in my hobbies, as I often tutor karate courses, etc. Because of that, I do think that I'm very eager to take leadership. I do feel it's very important for people to feel comfortable with that, and don't think that it's often necessary to act like a real boss, but more to let people work together as some kind of manager in the project.
So you see yourself more as a kind of a coach?
Yeah, something like that, really. So just put people together so you can use all their competences together to make the project work, actually.
Okay. Can you give an example of how you made the project work, how you steered the team towards success?
Well, for instance, my current PhD is something with a very wide background with loads of research questions. Because of this, it's very important to find the right people to investigate all these different questions without disturbing them or getting involved too much in it. Just give everyone his responsibility and let them work together to get a nice result.
So that's mainly from an expertise point of view, to have a complementary team. Suppose that at one point team members disagree or there is some kind of issue arising. How would you deal with that?
I do feel actually that it's important that you've got these issues. I don't think you can work as a team if there wouldn't be arguments, because you really need this bit more competitive atmosphere as you have in research, as you have to publish your work as fast as possible actually. So I do think it's important that you have this, but of course it's not, I don't need to make it too difficult for everyone to work together. Because of this, I do feel it's important that everyone can still have his own responsibilities and let everyone do his job.
Coming back to the publication issue, which of course is part and parcel of any academic job, when you say as fast as possible, in what respect would you make allowances, or would you make, let's say, consider that less than 100% is enough?
Well,
so to balance, we can keep researching for years and years. At what point do you feel that certain research is ready to be published?
Well, as I already said, I think certainly in the more fundamental research it's very important to work more as a team and not really as an individual. So when you work as a team with different research questions on one specific topic, it's more easily and goes faster to really get results. So I think, of course, it's important for an institute, certainly if you want to develop a certain reputation, to make it all make it very well and make sure that you take the right conclusions, etc. So you can't go too fast, of course, but it still is a race, and if you don't do it, someone else will do it, and for you actually.
Okay, so that of course creates stress. How, for instance, the weekend downtime, how do you switch off? How do you do that? How do you make that switch from professional to personal life and back?
Well, I do have some special hobbies, and for instance, I have a season ticket in a special football team in Belgium. So I've got my special moments that I have in my spare time. I go to the fitness, etc. So I've got certain hours that I just say, now I have to take the time off, but for the rest, I do think it's much easier to do it like that and plan everything than to not do that and say, I'll work a whole afternoon on Saturday. It's not easy when you've got a relationship and things like that. So I do try to make it, to separate.
Just make it, okay, separate. Okay. Could you tell me about the latest mistake that you made? What did you learn from that?
Well, 2 months ago I had to do sampling at the Westerschelde in Belgium. So I needed to take sediment samples. And I must say it was a near-death experience actually, because yeah, I went, it was an intertidal area, and I had to go really deep into the river, and I went when the water was very low, and suddenly in 5 minutes or so the water started rising, and the mud flat I was standing on just turned into sludge and completely sank away. So yeah, it was a bit of a stressful situation as well, so because I only had 10 minutes to free myself and get back to shore. So I must say...
Did you get the sample?
Yes, yes, I did.
Even that?
Yeah, of course. Had to be worth it, of course. But yeah, I must say that probably was a bit of a mistake to do something that dangerous on your own. So,
and you were on your own?
Yeah, so won't do that again.
Okay, I see. Well, this is going to be, of course, a project that we'll be working on. when would you consider, in general, when do you consider a project a success?
Yeah, of course you make some goals before you start the project, and I do feel it is important to stay to those objectives and goals, to keep the overview, because it's very easily to get distracted and start with something completely different. Certainly in the more fundamental research you find results that are not really what you expected to get, and then you start focusing too much on that, and you lose the overview. So I do feel it is important to stay to the objectives. Certainly when you work in a team, you put the information together, everyone's relying on you. So.
Okay, I see. Still working in a team, because in this project that is a key issue. What is the main characteristic of a team member that you really, really value? Because you describe yourself as a leader. What is the main characteristic?
Well, I do feel it is important to think outside of the box, because you often see the kind of publications that are published, or most of the time it's completely the same. And when you really want to stand out and become a name, as a University of Dublin wants to be, I do think it is important to do the research that no one else does, or start with methods that no one else would use. So that's why I feel it is important to think outside of the box. Certainly because you can never compete with major institutes like MPI when you step into their territory, because they've got so much money, so much resources. We can never compete with them. So it's very important to do those special things that someone else wouldn't do. And that's something I've learned the last few years at Professor Verstraeten's Research Institute.
What are other things that you teach? Suppose that you become in this function, you have kind of a mentoring function as well. What are the three main messages that you give along? For instance, this one, focus on a niche, something that the others are not doing, and let's be ambitious there. What would two other things be that pass on as a mentor?
Yeah, I do feel it is important to keep on learning. So when you've got the opportunity to go to another research institute, to develop your network and to learn more and broaden your knowledge, I do think that is something very important, certainly for beginning researchers and PhD students. That is something I would really focus on, because they can learn much more just by discussing it with people outside of your own research institute. So that is something I do feel is very important. And what else is? Stay confident, and of course, when you're doing research and you receive unexpected results, it is important to just stay focused and don't let your head go down. And of course, certainly when you started, I do feel it is important